Okay, UFC Austin just wrapped up, and I'm going to give my initial thoughts on what was one of the most entertaining fight nights overall for all of 2023. Maybe one of the most entertaining cards. I mean, that card was so fun to watch. Maybe one of the most entertaining cards. Like, that card was so fun to watch. It's right up there with what, like UFC 290, UFC 291, UFC Paris. These like amazing moments that we've had all year long. Arman Tsarukyan ended Beneil Dariush's career. Referee Kerry Hadley killed Bobby Green's career by taking his chin away for life. Davidson Figueiredo is back. And oh my God, does he fit in at his new weight class. Kelvin Gastelum is going to the PFL or Bellator, and Sean Brady is going to the Belal Muhammad dead zone of wrestling. My God, that was boring. Clay Guida, Misha Tate put the world to sleep, and the prelims were better than any past UFC Canadian pay-per-view. I'm just kidding, Canadian fans. I know how you get. Let's get right into it. Firstly, the one referee that I did want to talk about before we talk about the next one was Jacob Montalvo. Thank you so much for letting Rodolfo Bellato fight through that first and second round. There was like definitely points there where that fight could have been called off, but we saw that Rodolfo had that fight in the fighter in him. He bit down on his mouth guard and just gutted out. Just an amazing win. So good to see. And I love seeing a ref let a fight go on like that, okay? Now, there were fights that were followed up after that one. We had 2 fights that had body slam finishes as well. This is how crazy just the prelims were, and maybe that led into my hype for the rest of the fight night overall, but watching those 3 just start to pick up like that, everyone was just like, something amazing is happening here. There is an energy in UFC Austin tonight. So Drakkar Klose, Cody Brundage, they get phenomenal slam knockouts. And at that point, the crowd probably started slamming beers because they knew that they were in there for a big night. It was the prelims, and the crowd was completely sold out, going wild. Then after those 2 fights, we did have a little bit of a nap session as Misha Tate got her win. Good for her. Okay, fine. She got her win. Very entertaining. Next fight that I really wanted to talk about was Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. Let's be honest, Sean Brady wet blanketed that fight. I personally hate those sort of wet blanket wrestlers. It's just so boring and sleep inducing. Like, I am going to be looking forward to Sean Brady losing in the future. He is now one of those fighters that whenever I see his name, I'm just instantly going to be going for the other guy. I just want to see you lose once. I want to get my time back for that. It was such a boring performance, except for the finish. Okay, the finish, the armbar at the end was really cool. As you're a fan just consuming these fights, when the fight is starting to nod you off and put you to sleep, and maybe I was being a little bit too harsh on it because things leading up to it were so good, and then that started to happen, I was just like, oh my God, what are we doing? When you're in that kind of a mood and then you see this armbar pop up and your blood is starting to rush, you realize you're about to see another man's arm get snapped in front of your eyes in HD. If that guy doesn't tap, that's an adrenaline rush. That is a real adrenaline rush. That's one of the many things that makes watching this sport so damn entertaining. That doesn't save you from the wrath of how boring that fight actually was. So great finish to a horrible fight. Very bad. You're going on the Belal Muhammad pile of fighters that I want to see lose in the future. You're there with Merab Dvalishvili. You're just boring and you're a killer. You kill the entertainment factor of the night. As for Kelvin Gastelum, I love Kelvin Gastelum. He's always been such a good bloke, such a gentleman, such a grindy fighter, always willing to get back in the cage and keep going. But what do you say about Kelvin and his career now? You know, to me, Kelvin Gastelum is one of those fighters where I don't think he belongs in the UFC anymore, but I wish him nothing but success going forward in the future. And go to PFL or /Bellator, PFL/Bellator, where PFL Bellator are doing this thing where they're having 8 championship fights a year or 8 pay-per-views a year. And they've said that these are just for fun cards. Just cards that we're willing to see what happens and do great matchmaking. Kelvin, go over there and do that, man. Go over there, do that. Have a good time with that. Maybe even try the PFL League, the PFL Champions League, because the only people in PFL and Bellator that actually get paid good money, apart from obviously the $1 million PFL champion winners, are ex-UFC fighters, because PFL just want to prove that they pay more than the UFC. So you might end up actually making more over at the PFL, and you might have a better chance against a level of fighters that just aren't quite as good as UFC fighters. What do you do with Calvin? I don't want to see him to continue to be this gatekeeper that just keeps losing. So try a different division, try a different organization, and have a go somewhere else, and good luck in the future. What else can you say? Moving on, Deiveson Figueiredo. Yeah, he is as good as he has always been. And as I said in my video talking about how off I felt the odds were, he was just stronger and fresher. That weight cut at flyweight was just a little bit too much to him. Not having to give up that much weight put concrete in his chin, in his hands, in his arms. Like, Rob Font got hurt, and Rob Font does get hurt. Rob Font has very slick boxing, but if you can put a bit of power and just a little bit faster than Rob Font, you can really rock him and hurt him. And that's what happened. And as for Rob Font, he just needs to keep grinding away. I mean, he is a really good fighter, and there is no shame in losing to Deiveson Figueiredo. So as for Rob Font, you just keep grinding, you keep getting better, and we keep pushing forward. You're exactly where you need to be. You lost to Deiveson Figueiredo. It's one of those ones where, ex-champ Deiveson Figueiredo didn't weight cut. He's great. He's a great fighter. And what is next for Figgy? You know, let's just look at this as a bit of a comparison. Alex Pereira lost his belt to Israel Adesanya, moved up, beat Jan, got a title shot. Deiveson lost to Brendan Moreno, moved up, got Rob Font, and now, well, unfortunately, bantamweight is just too stacked to have that same effect. Now, if he wants to push it, he is ex-champ. Like, he can just whip it out and flop it onto the table and say, I'm an ex-champion, and demand a title shot. But I think if he also wants to just wait and see what happens in the Sandhagen fight or in that Merab Cejudo fight and take the winner of one of those two fights, I don't think that is a problem either. I think there's just a little bit too much of a log jam that Dana has caused by giving Marlon Chito Vero his free shot at Sean O'Malley, and it's just sort of slowed things up a little bit. And Deiveson Figueiredo here just wants to approach this next fight with caution and maybe think smart, because he is in the position where other ex-champions have stepped into title fights. It depends how he wants to play this. I'm not sure. Maybe leave that one of how Deiveson Figueiredo should play this next. Leave what you think he should do down in the comments for me. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was a horrible stoppage. A horrible stoppage. Jalin Tuner against Bobby Green. Jalin Tuner finishing Bobby Green. And not just finishing Bobby Green, but taking years off his career. He was knocked down and then hammer fisted, and maybe went out for a little bit and woke up in between the hammer fists because the arms were up, the arms were down, and then the arms were properly down and more fists started to rain down on Bobby Green. That stoppage came about 11 seconds too late, and Bobby Green took a lot of damage. To a fighter who is getting older and has taken damage in the past, that stoppage is a real problem for the future of Bobby Green. We'll see what happens when he comes back. We'll see how he looks. Now, the referee, Kerry Hatley, usually is a really good ref. Like, we don't talk about him a lot because he doesn't often make a lot of mistakes. So while everyone is going to be calling for him to get fired, and maybe he does deserve it. I mean, Bobby Green being on the ground unconscious, taking heavy shots to the back of the head, that could have been a really serious problem. A really serious injury could have happened. Shots to the back of the head kill people. And if that happened, that could be the end of the UFC. Like, just think about this, okay? It's prime time. Prime time on ESPN, and this event was a big event. There were a lot of eyes of it. It seemed like the entire sporting world seemed to be tuned in tonight. Some of the numbers and how many people were reacting to this event on Twitter. The crowd was full during prelims. All the media talk about it. A lot of eyes were on the UFC tonight, Saturday night in America. And if a man gets beaten to death while the referee is standing over him doing nothing, that's a very hard thing from this entire sport to just recover from and keep rolling on with. We cannot allow that to happen. And obviously, we don't want to see someone die in the cage. Like, this is a sport. This is not gladiators. That's why the ref is there. That's why these people are checked medically. We do not want that to happen. And this was one of those situations where shots to the back of the head of an unconscious man, really not good, really not good. So the ref does need to be punished, but it is hard to get a good MMA referee, and we don't want to lose one when we have one. So I think a fitting punishment for something like this would be a year away from the UFC as a suspension. A year away, still ref PFL, LFA, Cage Warriors, still get your reffing in and, you know, try and get better at where you made mistakes today, but to step away from the big money events for a bit of time to teach a lesson, you know, it's essentially a regular sporting fine, a regular sporting suspension. And that's my suggestion of how you handle such bad refereeing, but I could be way off on that. Again, another one to let me know about down in the comments. And then that brings us to the main event, Arman Tsarukyan. Such a fun name to say. What an amazing, amazing win against Beneil Dariush. Now, firstly, I mean, he looked devastated. Beneil looked devastated with that loss, man. He knows that that title run is going to be really hard to put back together now. And again, it was another hard knockout, wasn't it? That took a fair bit off the chin. That was a proper knockout. Who knows what he wants to do next? But Beneil is one of these fighters where he has earned the right to stay and be competitive if he wants to. He's earned the right to do whatever he wants to do, and for us, the fans, to support him in whatever he wants to do. There are some fighters like Tony Ferguson, you know, they keep fighting and all the fans can say, all the MMA media can say, everyone is just saying, Tony, please retire. We beg you, retire. Beneil Dariush isn't one of those fighters. But to him in his heart, he had that look on his face where you could see the eye of the tiger just slipping away. And I don't know if that was just something he's carrying in that moment or something he's going to keep carrying going forward. But again, Beneil Dariush, one of those guys, he can do whatever he wants in the future. As for Arman Tsarukyan, I mean, welcome to the top 5 of the UFC. Let's go. What do you want to see for him? To me, I want for Islam Makhachev next, Justin Gaethje. That's what I would like to see. So that leaves Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. That's what I would like, but it could be Tsarukyan versus Dustin Poirier. That's fine too. So I don't know how I would stack that, but that's sort of the way I would do it. I would do Gaethje versus Islam, Oliveira versus Tsarukyan, and go forward from there. I think that's the right way to do it. But of course, then that just leaves Justin Poirier out here. Like, what are we going to do with him? I don't know. That's always the fun of the matchmaking. So you let me know down in the comments, what do you think of that? How would you restack the top 5 of lightweight now going forward? Who's next for Makhachev? Who's next for Tsarukyan? How do we sort this out? That's it. That was an amazing fight night for the Americans of their night. That was an amazing day for me watching this during the daytime. One of the best cards of the year. It was so entertaining. Let me know all your thoughts down there in the comments. And if you're enjoying these videos, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. I'll see you all in the next one.